Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Faith Podcast. Oh my gosh.
Turn it all the way up.
I'm over it. Let's go to the next one. New Year's. Hi guys, welcome into the Two Trees Church Authentic Faith Podcast. We're still doing Christmas music over here. Brad, are you...
Yeah, Moriah, with this being our last podcast for the year, as we head into the holidays and we take a break to focus on family, stop looking over this table right now. I've got something in my hand I've been hiding. But November 1st, we inaugurated the Christmas season, and Moriah was very uncomfortable. I saw deep down that Moriah had some issues with Christmas.
Okay.
And she let it leak out in the podcast a little bit, but didn't get into it, and we don't need to get into it. We're just going to let that go. Whatever it is, it's inside, but I'll tell you this.
It's not.
Moriah bought a Christmas tree before Thanksgiving. She actually has a Christmas tree right
heart
now.
Transformation.
I am really embarrassed. And I have to say, it's only because I want to do it my way. So I'm going slow.
And hold on, I'm not feeling this song completely.
Yeah, me
so
neither.
hold on. So it was Santa Baby, but hold on, let's keep going. So
Mariah Carey is the one that did it for her last time. It was the seed that was in her heart and just grew over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Sprouted. Blossomed.
Let's just not. Is that an animal? What is that?
yeah, I don't know what that is, but here you go. So I'm going to slowly or abruptly shut that off. And I'm going to say Moriah.
Survivor? Naughty
You're a
list?
naughty list survivor. I got you a gift because Moriah actually...
This is so dramatic.
It's not dramatic. It's love. It's kindness. It's because you're important to
Yeah.
us. So Moriah did not like Christmas, but she's been healed. She actually got a tree and she got an avocado ornament, I think, right? Yeah. And so Clover, her roommate, who is on the team with us, actually was really jealous that Moriah got into the Christmas season before she did. So there's been a healing. So Moriah, I'm going to actually give you a gift
It's an ornament?
from the Lawsons.
Oh,
so
gosh.
here, from me and Shanna. And so Merry early Christmas,
Should I
Moriah.
open this
I know
right
there's
now?
been a healing. Yes, open it on air right now so everybody can see
It
it.
better be good. Is this a reef? I feel like this is a tree.
She's a
this a pine
she's
cone?
a naughty list survivor if you see this.
Oh, the tackiest of them all. Exactly what I was. This is cute. That's cute. That's cute.
That's super rad.
Okay, is he on a? He's on like a animal. Is
He's
this
on a piñata.
Is that a donkey?
Oh,
This
yeah.
will be my favorite. I like his rosy cheeks.
I knew you'd like it.
Everyone can see he's really cute.
I searched
kinda
I searched
Mexican.
probably seriously 10 to 12 minutes for these.
This is cheesy, but I kind of like it.
I know you do. I know
Shut
you
up.
do. You're going to put it on and you're going to love it. You're going to remember this forever.
Do you know why? It's because I'll think of where they came from.
There you
The
go.
memories. Okay?
What do you think we do when we put our little kids
I don't know what you do.
ornaments on the tree?
I
We
don't
think
know.
about where they came from.
I don't have children.
Mariah's life is changing right before our eyes.
So Merry Christmas, Moriah.
Merry Christmas.
This is loud. Y'all have to edit. Did I break it? I don't know. Well, I'm offended, so I'm going to leave the church. Just kidding. We're talking about church hurt today, so I don't even know how to start this. I'll just say we want to talk about church culture and church hurt. And that's it. Let's go. Who wants to
go.
start this? Let's break it open.
Why don't
Who's
you
been
break?
hurt?
Why don't you break it up and talk about it? Give us an intro. Your thoughts on church hurt.
It depends. My thoughts, just like any relationship, figure it out. I feel my thoughts on this, I'll say briefly. If you guys don't cancel me for this. I'm just saying, this is my opinion. But if it can work out, work it out. Be bold and work it out. And if not, if it's like an abusive relationship, break it off and be done.
How do you define what's abusive and what's not?
I mean, it's kind of easy to know what's abusive, I think.
Don't say I think. Know what you know.
I said I think.
Okay, so
I
what's
think.
abusive? What's not?
Let me get some examples in my mind. I mean,
And
That's
John
a good
can speak into
question.
this too. I'm just trying to challenge the
Let's
conversation.
talk about that.
Yeah, it's great.
Altogether.
Abusive. Okay, so it could be abusive. Like
You always have the good, quick answers.
what?
You always got the quick
Mariah
answer.
doesn't like being put on the spot.
No, I
but
need
that's
some
okay.
time to marinate. You know.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's why I'm letting you just kind of sit there and think, and I'm thinking the whole time. So I'm not as quick as it looks. But
Got warm in here with that Christmas.
if you're talking, if you're talking abusive, it can be abusive emotionally. Like a church leader can definitely
I was
abuse
thinking of
somebody
like
emotionally.
examples, like more. That's good.
Well,
Yeah,
what's that
so
look like?
I
Flesh
would
that out.
Yeah, first thought is service. So someone that's serving and someone that's kind of always serving, always serving, always serving. And then the leader of that ministry or even the leader of the church will continuously ask more. Will you do this? Can you do this? Can you also do this? Can you also do this? Without
That's true.
any type of honor and or gratitude and or just being intentional about that person's rest as well.
Yeah.
So you want to just
That's more labor abuse.
digging into that,
I would say.
like, so serving and being responsible, and biblically being responsible means you get more. Remember the parable of the talents? He said you've been responsible for a little bit, you get
Oh, yeah.
more. So is someone giving you more responsibility church hurt?
Oh,
No.
definitely not.
So then whose job is it to say yes or no?
Your own. Say, hey,
That's
you know what?
this is the interesting part about church
I don't know
hurt.
if I
Like,
can handle that right
so
now.
what's so interesting about it is like, you know,
Communicate.
now I'm a senior pastor, right? Like, so I'm in leadership and I'm able to do many things. Before I was in this position, I saw things differently for sure. And, you know, I'm open enough to say like, okay, so maybe now I have been through my own church hurt stories, and, you know, there's been
For
a lot
sure.
of that I've kind of come out and grown from. But I think when you're in something and you don't know for sure exactly, like, is this right or wrong or abusive? Is this, where am I at? Why do I feel powerless? Why do I feel like it's all like kind of running over me a little bit? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? I think in those moments, like, we have very powerful choices. And I feel that sometimes, like, we are creating a culture of believers that have no personal responsibility for their yes. You know, and I think it's interesting because no one can force anyone to do anything basically in America. Like, we don't tell you you have to vote for someone or you're put in prison. We don't tell you if you campaign for the wrong candidate, you're going to jail.
They just control it all.
You
So
might,
there
they
you
might
go.
cancel you, but even then, like, is canceling somebody abuse? It's like, once they stop allowing you to speak openly in your homes and in your streets or whatever, it's like, I guess that's a different level of like abuse, you know, like, or like evil, I guess. But, my point is, like, I feel like sometimes we would label something church hurt, and it's like, I'm not sure if it is, and I'm not sure, but I would take personal responsibility as a leader that I don't actually lead people to powerful choices and a powerful life as a follower of Jesus. Does that make sense? Like, so like, I don't see someone who serves on Sundays any differently than I see myself, and I serve in a different capacity in a different place in the church, right? Everyone has a responsibility to their responsibility. So if someone keeps giving you more or whatever, like, I understand that. It's like, man, I can't say no. And there is something to that when you honor someone in authority. And I've had people in authority where I felt more guilt and like obligation to them because of who they were. And then they take advantage of that. But then my question is, like, why did I allow them to take advantage? You know,
Well, I don't
does that make
also-
sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
people,
there's,
people
there-
who are like, I want to do this, I want to, and they keep saying yes, but then they burn out, and they're like, I can't do this, and they don't say it was your fault. They just are like, I can't be a part of this anymore. I'm too tired or whatever. And I'm like, that's totally you. In my opinion, you're not communicating your needs, and no one was asking you except you were saying you wanted to do that.
Right, completely. And I agree with all that to the fullest. But if I have to be the person on the other side of this,
Yeah.
I would challenge it in the sense that people aren't on that level of thinking. Until you go through that kind of experience, or you've dug in deep and done the hard work yourself,
Yeah.
to say no and or to just communicate what's on your mind to a leader or somebody of influence, you don't have that skill, you don't have that awareness, you don't have
Yeah.
that ability. And I say that in the sense of what I do. So we're talking about church, but what I do in the company I work for with all of my team is I'm constantly talking to them and I'm asking them, what's on your mind? Let's not talk about what's going on, but like, what's on your mind? Do you
That's
feel
good.
overwhelmed? Do you have too much? Where's your thoughts? And I just talk life and get into the heart
good.
stuff. then I always take it back to what do they want to do? So like, what are your dreams? What are your goals? Like, where you want to go? But also, what are your current responsibilities? We chat about all of that. And I bring that up because I feel like in church,
That's
because
good.
we're all
Yeah.
here to serve Jesus, we can just put that label on it. Well, serve Jesus. So I'm going to keep saying yes, keep saying yes, keep saying yes. But if the leader, with the person with influence, is always constantly adding more and not just sitting you down and saying, hey, what are you working on right now? I want to help you organize your own thoughts without you even knowing it.
That's good.
Then you can move into that emotional.
But is that but
That's helpful.
with the yeah, I'm not, so that's good and bad leadership. You're a great
100%.
leader, right?
Right.
But so am I abusing someone by offering an opportunity for somebody
no.
to say yes? You know what I mean? Is that
Yeah.
what's the difference between abuse and
Definitely
maybe
not.
bad leadership?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
there is, here's my problem. It's like when people say like, you know, I've been abused actually, right? So like when someone says like my parents were abusive, and I'm like, well, what'd they do? And I'm like, well, that was definitely difficult, but I'm not sure that that was abusive in the sense that I've experienced it.
How do
Right.
you know?
You know what I mean? Like, so do you see what I'm saying?
Though?
So
Oh, yeah,
like, is
totally.
it, and I'm not like correcting anybody. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like, I want to dig deeper in this topic just because I feel like psychologically we've created soft people.
And I agree with that to the fullest as well.
You know what I mean? Because we're like,
Yeah.
even you, like, you're doing the right thing. So let me say, John's doing the right thing. I do a lot of this myself.
Right.
I care much more about the quality of life we
Right.
live together than I do what we're doing together by
You
far.
constantly are
definitely do,
like,
yeah.
I'm constantly
Are you
doing
all
this.
right?
So me and John are in the
Yeah.
you're in the same place. We're always checking on people. We
Right.
get that.
well,
But-
I just believe my problem is I need to do that more because I just in my leadership I just trust that people are gonna like tell me when they're. But then here I am, not always telling you when I'm not okay. So it's like it's funny. I expect people to come to me and be like, "Hey, I can't do that," and I'm like, I don't say anything unless I just assume they're all good. And then here I am. I'm barely able to even come to you and tell you when Brad when I'm tired, and I just think I can handle it also. So I'm like. But I'm not like I'm being
abused or not seen or
Yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
like, so
I
I
don't think like that. I'm
not
just-
being seen or valued, that's a real thing. The question is like church hurt. Like, so how do you get church hurt? Like and you were talking about Bible scriptures, and the first thing that popped in my mind is like Jesus is the most church hurt person in the
100%.
Bible. He was actually crucified
handled
and he
it.
did nothing wrong. Like nothing wrong. It was like, okay, religious people raged against its ministry and placed him on a cross. So if there's anyone who identifies with church hurt, first of all, it's Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's been through it, but
religious hurt for sure. Also,
I just think the psychology of where we're at, like in the next generation, for me, I battle it a little bit because I go like, why do we have to go through all that? Shouldn't people be maturing in the Lord?
yeah,
And like,
communicate.
shouldn't we be able to like, and I agree with you, John. Like, yeah, that's good leadership. You're doing the right thing. My problem is like, I don't see people as sheep, mindless followers. And I think part of this, we've actually never taken the crutches off and like allow people like choose. I tell people this all the time, like choose.
put it in their
Like,
hands.
what do you want to do? I'm
Right.
not going to force you to step into this position. It's your choice. But now if you don't choose, here's what it is. And also here's the other thing. It's like, I hold a high value for people to come to the table ready.
Right.
Right? Like, so like come to the table for sure, but don't come to the table until you're ready. Like come ready to serve. Part of being ready is having clear boundaries in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Part of being ready is managing and organizing your own schedule.
Right.
And knowing like, oh, this is a little too much, or maybe this is a priority. This isn't,
Yeah,
you know? So I'm going to say yes to this. I'm going to say no to that. Like
Yeah.
this is all our own personal responsibility. And sometimes when we don't manage that, I believe that we're creating a blame shifting mindset in people where it's always the pastor's fault or always
Yeah.
someone else's fault.
and then when something happens, so it's their fault.
Yeah.
not taking responsibility.
I've been exposed to true manipulation and it's ugly and it's not good. You know, I've been around it.
Yeah.
That
But how? I have a question. Why are you now leading a church? How did that not make you run in the opposite direction? And you were like hearing stories from past experiences. How did that make you like? I feel like you have reason to be like, okay, I'm done. This is ridiculous. But instead, you are now leading a church, and you're not gonna you're not gonna keep those things with you.
Yeah, it's
What
great.
made you stay with that?
It's a great question. I think sometimes we put too much faith in people, and we put too much trust in people. And like even now, like when people ask me, like, you know, because we're very trusting, we give people stuff. It's like I'm really not. Like I'm really not super trusting. I'm just really, really trusting with the Lord. And so like in this, like, so how did I get through all this? I've had a real encounter with God.
Okay.
And I think you can't substitute that for anything. And it's like, so my
So it doesn't matter
testimony, my ministry was given to me by Jesus. It was not given to me by man. Like the platform that we have and all that God has given us as a ministry, this is the hard part for people. Is people, like Jesus said in John 10, he said, some people want to come through another door, and those people are thieves and robbers because they're trying to get the things of God without coming through the person of Jesus, right? So like, I've actually come through Jesus. I didn't want to do this. This was not really, I mean, being a pastor period was not in my thinking.
Wow.
I was called by God. And when you're called by God, it's like, it was very, very real. So it doesn't matter when men fail me.
Okay, I have a story after this.
When men fail me, it's like, it doesn't crush me the way it crushes other people, because my faith does not rest on the wisdom of men.
That's good.
On the leadership of men,
Literally,
on the church that men build, on the marketing that men do, on the manipulation, none of this. My faith rests on an encounter with Jesus alone. And that's the problem, is we're living off everyone else's faith. We don't have our own stories.
That's good. Well, on that note, I was thinking of a moment that I was like hurt by the church. It was like men in the church, older men that were on like the ministry, missionary team, leadership team of the church. And I was sitting on a word. I had a word, and God said, you're going to Mexico. And I shared it in a past podcast episode, but they all said, you shouldn't go. They all said, you should go to college first. They all said all these things. You're 18, you're single, you don't have a mission organization. And I had a word from God that said, go. Like, send me. Yes, send me. Like, here I am, send me. And I met with them. I remember it was just like all these old white men sitting there. And I was like this girl, like ready to go. I'm fired up. And I just
You're
in love
still
with
a girl
God.
In front of
I am.
old white men.
Look at that. But this
Young
is a healthy.
And old white men.
I'm almost 30.
They were
I'm
old.
old now.
They were old.
Yeah.
And I was like fired up, like so excited for something that God's called me to. And I wasn't asking them permission. I was just like wanting kind of a blessing to go in peace and like send me with, is there a possibility to come behind me financially? And they basically said no. And I sat there and I was like, okay, it's not from you. God's sending me, and this is not like, I'm not going to ride on your
That's a super healthy
you.
way to process.
Right.
Well, I was like, no, he gave me a word. I'm going. It's confirmed. There were so many confirmations. And these guys were like all the giants in the land, all the things that like.
See, and this is, and I want John to speak in this too, but this is my question. Like, are we hearing the voice of God or not when we step into ministries?
Right.
Like,
so it doesn't matter how you
did God
hurt.
speak to you?
Yeah.
Or are you doing this because you're accepted for a moment? Because when you're do it for acceptance, when you're not accepted, or an idea isn't accepted, or you in a moment aren't accepted, if you're doing it for acceptance, you'll be rejected.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing it because you're called, you're actually compelled through the difficulty to endure it.
Yeah.
So you're not doing it because you were here and it's like, oh, an opportunity came. That's where sometimes it starts, but it's your responsibility to go and get a word from the Holy Spirit on your ministry.
Yeah. And I think about people just in the church too, and like not being fed or not feeling loved or not, it's like, how much of that is our responsibility, and like how much do people just press in and they own their community? Like how,
Well, that's where I think you could take this conversation in a bunch of different ways, it's ownership and responsibility, right?
For sure.
Going all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, like we use this big word abuse to kind of start the conversation, but we can narrow a lot of it down to good leadership and bad leadership.
Yeah.
And then also personal responsibility and ownership. Because if you, as a believer, right, if you're like, hey, I'm called to this church, then you're called to the church.
Right.
That doesn't mean the one person said something to you, or this little group of people it's hard to hang out with, or this, like finding all these nitpicky reasons. You're
there.
either called
Yeah.
or you're not, in a sense. And what I mean by that is, if you're called, you're called. Step into it. Go find more
Do
ways.
people
Go
even
discover
pray
it.
about the churches they go to?
I think so.
I would say they don't. So that's
Really?
just
You know
me.
what I mean? Do they
Yeah,
even
they
pray
do.
about the opportunities they say yes to?
I think what people
Like-
do, in my honest opinion, I think what people do is people pray and say, Lord, I want to be a part of a great church. And then they go see the flashing lights and the smoke and mirrors or whatever it is. And they go, oh, this place makes me feel good. This must be
Okay.
where the Lord's bringing me. And then that's it. And
then they stop making them
And
feel
then 6
good.
months down the road, they're hurt. They're not a
But
part
this-
of the church because they didn't actually
So
get a
good.
word from God.
Yes.
They just asked for a good church who walked into a place with lights and thought that was it.
Or the next big thing, the next skate ramp, the
Right.
next cool thing, the next good worship service, the next, all the cool kids are going over here. It's like
Right.
what the youth sometimes do. Like they would hop, like I used to hop to different youth groups. Like, this is cool. It's like adults. Like, no, stay here. Be planted in.
Right.
Yeah. And my thing is like in disciple making. This is
Yeah,
why we were
that's
never
some
called to make
accountability.
churchgoers. We're called to make disciples.
Yeah.
In disciple making, you walk with Jesus. It says that those who follow him know his voice.
Right.
So when he speaks, it says every word that comes from his mouth, every rhema is the Greek word, will be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. We don't practice this anymore. We hear one thing and we're like, oh, I'm gone. Oh, I got invited to a church. That must be God. It's like, well, go and pray. And it's a maturity issue and a character issue that keeps us from going through a season where we're seeking Jesus, but we're showing up and we're not dishonoring the people we're showing up for. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
where you're saying like, okay, I'm not sure if this is God, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be fully present.
Yeah.
And once God confirms it, I'll know for sure, but we get ahead of ourselves. We're like, oh, I got to marry this church before I know,
Right.
or marry this ministry before I know that it's God. It's like, I'm more and more, like the more and more responsibility I get, I'm slowing down.
Right.
I'm slowing down. I'm saying, let's talk through things in a healthy way.
Right.
Let's think about things before we get there.
I think a lot of it has to do with people are going to be led by the words in which they hear that encourage their own desires. Right. So it's easier for me to say, hey, I'm going to go to this church because they're saying all the things that actually push me towards all my own desires and not just the word that the Lord has given me.
Thanks.
And let me say it in the more of a sense like this. You've been at a church for a year, 2 years, and now that position opened up and or position hasn't opened up. Let's say someone's in ministry and you want to move into this position, you want to move into this pastoral calling, and it wasn't given to you. It wasn't handed to you. So rather than just stacking chairs, you say, you know what? I think it's better if I go to this next church because they actually have a youth pastor role open and they're going to pay me X dollars to do it.
I've seen that happen a lot. Yeah.
And that right there, there's nothing about that has to do with serving Jesus.
And then, yeah.
But you can call it serving Jesus. Oh, well, I'm a youth pastor. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Here's the thing. If you are serving Jesus, you're going to be where he's called you to be. And if you're
good.
stacking chairs, that's what you're doing until he promotes you.
That's like come to Two
David-
Trees. You're
yeah.
going to do some stacking chairs.
To add one thing really quick.
That's all we do.
We're going to unload the van.
David, the Lord was in the middle of promoting David to king, and David would not even touch the position
Yeah.
until Saul was removed by God.
Yep.
He would not do it himself.
That's good.
But so many of us, especially those that are called to the church and are fired up in ministry and leaders, what we want to do is we want to go get the position, even if it means going somewhere else and doing something else that we're not called to do.
That's like stealing. Ooh, that's good. That's good.
God honors authority. And if God would allow authority to remain in place, even though they're not great authority, who are we to go undermine authority?
Right.
Right? Like, so like in a church setting, like
David
good
was
and,
so
good and bad
righteous.
leadership and ownership, you simplified it and that was great. Yes, there are some leaders that are bad leaders.
Right.
There's some people who make poor choices and treat people horribly. And that does hurt us. So you don't want to, like some people have been listening to this, you're like, man, they're just like totally dismissing church hurt. We're not dismissing church
not
hurt.
at all.
Stuff hurts. Not being seen hurts. Not connecting is difficult. Not being affirmed in your calling is hard. Like all that stuff is super hard. I've been through it. But the reality is now that I've gone through it, I realize that through it, God has made me a stronger person because I don't need to be affirmed by people now. I don't need everything I used to need from people. And I'm actually a stronger believer because of it. I got this and I sent this to a couple of people, but on Instagram, somebody posted, it said, not being scheduled on Planning Center every Sunday to play your instrument, preach, or lead your song like you would hope is not church abuse. Isn't that crazy? It's like, so like,
Yeah.
sometimes, like we've gotten to a place where it's like, if I don't get what I want, it's church hurt.
Yeah.
100%.
That's so good.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so we've made this whole thing, the performance idol has ingrained in our hearts so much that if we don't get what we think we want when we think we want it,
Right.
we reject it all.
Right.
I want to take this somewhere outside the church. You want to
Okay,
go there?
Yeah, go.
So I see this. Let's go to the world and politics. And you were talking about bad leadership. We're going way outside the church. But someone in leadership, poor leader, you don't like them. What people are prone to do, it seems like, is smear them and they're horrible. How dare they? All these things that they're doing. And it kind of reminds me of the church sometimes also. Like, here's all the things they're doing wrong. In politics, we also tend to do that to the leader, like the president or anyone, the governor, and I'm guilty. And instead, like, praying for them, blessing them. They're in there for a season, and like, just like all the kings in the Old Testament, God had them there, and they were very poor or they were great, but they were there. And I just like that in the church, like, why are we not blessing those leaders, like praying for them? Like, I just see parallels in the world today. Like, there's like the right side, the left side, and they're like, I hear people screaming that guys, they're so bad. They're so evil. All those things they're doing. And it's like, we just sound like so immature.
Yeah,
so,
this is going to be a tough
I'm
reality.
so hurt by them. I'm so hurt. They're hurting me. They're controlling me, and I'm guilty of them being like, dude, very control. Like, have sounded like that in the past, and I'm trying to like bless my leadership instead. And like,
Well,
do
how do they, so they might create policy that makes certain aspects of your life one way or another, whether you agree or not. But the reality is, like, who's responsible for your home?
right?
Like, all I
Right.
see, as you were talking, all I can
So
see
it's
is
I
like,
see
like
both.
he said, you're a light
Yeah.
in a dark world. Like he said, you're a city lit up, set on a hill. You're a lamp placed in the center of the room to give light to everyone else. It's like, he doesn't require that the world becomes light in order for you to thrive. Like, the world doesn't have to all of a sudden become good. The world actually, the Bible says, is going to get worse and worse. It says,
Yeah.
but in spite of that, it says we're going to grow stronger and stronger and go from glory to glory. It's like, my home is peaceful. I don't care who's in government.
Yeah.
My home is happy. Why? Because Jesus is there. Like, my home, like, how am I not hurt by what Trump says or Biden says or who's the next whoever, or who's the whatever, like, who gets voted on the city council in Ventura? We're just having local politic talk too. You want to go outside there? It's like, because I'm actually not a victim.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not a victim of any of it. I have the most powerful force in the universe in my body, and his name is Jesus.
So I have a question. Oh, do you want to say?
I just want to add to this really quick. When we talk about ownership and responsibility, and we talk about still being sensitive to the fact that hurt is hurt, and you can be hurt. It's possible. It happens. But what's healthy is when you step back and you process it,
Right.
and you pray about
Yes.
it, and then you take steps forward.
Forgiving.
Don't react out of emotion. Respond out of the wisdom from God.
That is so good. Forgiving. Like,
Right.
this is a concept for church hurt people.
Right.
That it's like the most fundamental thing in our faith. Forgive them.
Yeah. Well, my question is,
Forgive them, and you'll be free.
if we're called to be light in the world in that dark place, and you're saying like, you're passionate right now about this, well, it should be so much more in the church.
Yeah.
If we're so called to be light in the darkness in the world, it should be easier in the church. We're an example in the church. So I'm saying, if everyone's stoked to be light of the world and love the world and show Jesus here, then why are we running away from people in the church? You know, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? This is a question. I don't know. But processing the pain for real. Like, I think forgiving people sets you free. The book we're reading, Soul Care, right now is lit about this. It's so, so, so good. But there's a whole chapter on forgiveness. Anyway, but what you said is so good. Processing the pain.
Yeah, and I think I just
And the
sit in it
fear.
because I think now, like, having been through my own stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and not just with church hurt, like church leadership. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a leader who hurts you. Maybe it's a small group person who like says something very insensitive or
Yeah.
whatever. Like maybe it's something else. Like maybe it's just it triggers something in a past trauma with community or worship or whatever it is. Like there's different ways to be hurt too. It's not just always through leadership. A lot of times
Definitely.
it does happen through poor leadership, but I got to be real too. Like I've hurt people.
Right.
Yeah.
I've actually hurt people. Like I've actually made decisions that wounded people. Now, I think every person has a choice on what they're going to do with their wounds. Because I know Jesus said he'll heal it all. So like if we're standing, some wounds emotionally and spiritually just continue to bleed out. That's what's different about emotional and spiritual wounds. Like your physical wounds will heal itself. Like you actually have to go in and work on your spiritual
That's true.
wounds.
Wow.
So like when I have a church hurt or I have a difficult situation that I've endured within church community, maybe it's even just like someone speaking a truth that offends you, right? Like whatever it is, you have the responsibility to go back and go, okay, Lord, why does that hurt me?
Yeah.
Why did that offend me? Why am I so bothered by that situation? I do this a lot. I'll sometimes just sit in prayer and meditation and go, Lord, that situation's lingering in my mind. What do you think about this?
So you're letting offense become a doorway for you to enter in and process with God.
Yeah. I've had it in you even leaving positions or like changing churches. I've changed churches before. Like, or I've stepped out or resigned or I've done, stuff like that in difficult situations. But on the other side of it, I can tell you today, like I have zero bitterness with anyone. I have zero resentment with anyone. I can't think of one person I dislike right now, like from my past, even people who've hurt me, even my dad. Like I can't think, I hurt for them. I have compassion for them. Like and I don't see them any lower. I think that's the other thing. It's like our ego and our pride's like, well, they're dealing with this issue down here. It's like, well, no, I'm dealing with issues too. I think we're all broken.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
Right. I was gonna say I couldn't agree more. That word to me is spot on, and I think the reality is there are still things that happen in my life today that hurt me, or I feel hurt, or I feel the emotions of which get me wrapped up in my thoughts and my mind of like I'm hurt, I'm sad. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? But it's just what I've learned is if I just react and I jump on that, then I start to project something onto God that is not even who he is. And a lot of times talk about like church hurt and bad leadership, where what we do is we take the event or the circumstance and then we go project it on God's character.
Everything.
And on everything that is the church, but not what the church is in the Bible, of course, but what people say the church is. And next to know, we think the best thing is to do is remove ourselves.
Okay,
well, the best thing
that's
I can do
good.
is remove myself. But maybe the Lord actually has something for your heart, and standing still, being steadfast and faithful to what he's called you to.
Yeah. I have lots of friends who have left the church because they don't believe that. They just don't believe it. And they haven't seen the church show up in certain things that have happened the last 3 years. And they're like, no way. And it's really rough. I'm like, well, the church isn't perfect. The people aren't perfect. And like, Jesus is perfect. And it's just like being with them in that and having conversations. And like, I find we believe the same thing still. They just are really so hurt. And like,
They are.
it's so tough.
And the thing is,
It's
I think like
sensitive.
in our language, we've made it so dualistic in a way where it's like the duality of it's like, well, when I'm in this building with these people, that's church. And when I'm out of this building
Right.
with other
Yeah.
people, it's secular or it's not. And it's like
I think they're hurt by the building.
the reality.
that like,
Maybe
the
they're hurt by
structured-
decisions made within the building. Maybe
Yeah.
they're hurt by
but they won't go in the building.
what happens in the building. Yeah. But what's interesting is you're still the church. The church is you.
Exactly.
Like, so you're a Christian, you're a follower of Jesus, you have the Holy Spirit in you, you're the church. So like, say your church hurt, like you can be a church person and be hurt for sure. You can't leave the church. Like Jesus won't leave you. Like he said that nothing can separate you from my love. Romans 8, it says that everything can come against you. Death, life, all this stuff. He says, but my love will never fail you. Right. So like people in their hurt, like you're loved even in your hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this is where like what's interesting is the more I spend time with God, and like in my younger years, I wasn't like this, but I've rediscovered my first love in prayer. I was like very punk rock a little bit in my early years and was like shaking my fist at everything. And I was a reformer. I still am a reformer in a lot of ways, but I think I've turned into more of just like a prayer person where I really want to be a person of prayer, where I spend time with Jesus, and I'm letting God heal my life. And all I can think is I want him to pour good in people. And I see the hurt. I see the people in, I see the people out. I see the people who maybe don't know how to process conflict correctly. Or I see the people who maybe have been hurt by the way someone else processed their conflict, or someone who didn't have the authority to say yes or no, and somebody who pushed themselves on you or overreached or whatever.
Yeah.
I see all this. I'm like, I understand this, but do you know that Jesus is still good? Do you know he still wants to talk to you right now?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that stop, like in God's mind from heaven, he's looking down, he sees this broken church and this broken world. He's going, you have access to me. Like you have access to my love.
Yeah.
You have access to healing. The
Release
cross was
it.
for you. I was actually wounded for you, Peter says. My body was broken for you. So your church hurt, let me absorb it. Like, let me have it, because this is why I died.
That's good.
Like, so
Release that to the
why do we
listeners.
sit in
Come
our
on.
hurt? Like, why do we
Yeah.
sit in it? That's me. It's like, I don't want to sit in hurt for days that turn into weeks, that turn into months, that turn into years. And before you know it, it's like you have no faith at all
Yeah.
because of a small situation. I'm like, you're still letting that thing abuse you.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
And now it's no longer church hurt. It's self-inflicted abuse. Now you're allowing that situation in your mind. You've actually allowed the demonic realm to take this thought and beat you with it over and over and over again.
What about the person that says, no, I'm fine. No, it's fine. I don't. No.
Well, that's not great leadership or communication either. This is where I struggle, because it's like, let's
No, I
talk
mean,
about things in an open
yeah.
way. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
say,
yeah.
like,
The
own your
person
life.
who has been hurt and they're like, no, I'm fine.
Then you let it be. In
Yeah.
all honesty, love.
So, yeah.
I mean, phenomenal book if you haven't read it, but Bob Goff, Love Does. He talks about the very first chapter is just like love does, and you just simply say, I'm with you. And with those that are like, all right, I'm hurt by the church, and you've talked to them and you've prayed with them, and you've, at the end of the day, it's like they have to make their own choices. They have
Right.
to go to God. They have to have
That's
ownership. And I'm just here with you, and I love you. And when we have time, we'll hang out. But that's
Yes.
it. Like that's
That's
The
good.
longer I'm in this, the more I just lead people to a choice.
right.
That's it. I don't tell people what to do. I'm very slow even to give my input on situations. You guys experience that. I'm like, well, here's your choices. You've got this, and then you've got whatever comes on the other side of those choices because of the choice you made. But I don't ever want, the longer I'm in it, the more I see, like, to stop the church hurt on my end as a senior pastor is I believe in clarity. I speak clearly to people when the time's right. I'm patient for a long time. Then I speak clear whenever something needs to be said, right? But I give people a choice. Like, you can choose to step into this or
That's
not.
good.
It's your choice, because this is my way of preventing church hurt. Because I say, it's actually your choice.
So I have a
I'm not gonna force anybody.
Yeah, I have a question. So, hopefully it stirs up some good convo here. But so for someone that might be watching this and they've experienced church hurt, whatever that is, however it is they interpret it, and whether they've sat in it for years or they've taken ownership or all of these things we're talking about, why should they now consider being a part of a church, like an actual Sunday morning church community? Why? What are the benefits of them stepping into that?
I mean, I could go off about this just because I don't know that you can fully experience the person of Jesus outside
No.
of a body of people. Like, I think we're together. The Holy Spirit flows in different measures through many people, and it's like the arm, the Bible says, being dismembered from the body. It's like you have to, we're interconnected whether we like it or not. And your purpose, your fulfillment, you know how many times I've walked into church broke and someone handed me a check, or I've walked in discouraged and the pastor spoke a word, or whatever it is. Like, I think the fullness of the Christian life is realized in community. And I think it's essential. I don't know personally. I know they exist. And if you're out there and you're going to argue about this, that's fine. Whatever. I'll say that I do not know a person who follows Jesus who is growing in spiritual maturity outside of community. I know believers. I know people are going to heaven. I know people who have, nice people or whatever. I'm saying growing and increasing in their maturity outside of community.
Dang.
I don't know one. Like, I don't know a single follower of Jesus who is getting better outside of community. Most of us, like even in our deconstruction, I deconstructed for a lot of years. But you sit in it and you begin to build community around your brokenness.
Right.
And so you don't actually get better. And the stories, it's like all we've basically done is now there's no authority. And so when someone has abused authority, church hurt, a lot of it does come from misused authority.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I've been around abusive leaders and it sucks. I've been around people who don't communicate well. It sucks. I've been around people who don't see you. It sucks. But just because one dad's bad doesn't mean all dads are bad. Just because one pastor hurts you doesn't mean that all pastors are going to hurt you. When I first landed in Ventura, it was so deconstructed that people were like, I don't even believe you should have like a lead pastor of a church. And I'm like, I agree. I kind of agree. Like biblically, yeah, I agree. Like we believe like we're five-fold ministry. So it's like you got the apostle, the pastor, the teacher, the prophet, the evangelist, like the whole thing. Yeah, I agree that there's tension there with me with like the model of church. However, Jesus is leading the church. Like, so when the church lays their lives down, unity comes. And just because one pastor allowed his ego to get in the way, like you would hope that modeling that differently will heal that, right? Like in our church, like I am obviously carrying a lot of authority, but the people who are close to me know that it's more out of stewardship that I carry it rather than ego. I don't have to be the guy. That's never the goal. I want to hear God's voice on assignments. I want to hear God's voice on responsibilities and on decisions. And I want people who carry the heart of Jesus well to carry this ministry alongside me. It's never to control it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. 100%.
I would say for them that it's worth it. It's worth it because it's so good to worship together. It's so good to be together. Like there's some rough times that you walk through and you confront and you handle, but it's so rich when you get to be in a room together with these people that are a mess. Like we had a worship team dinner the other night and we were worshiping and I was just sitting there like, this is insane. These people are so incredible. Like this is just so cool that we get to worship in our brokenness and in our like imperfection. And here we are and we're like worshiping the King of Kings. Like I love that we get to come together and be there on a Sunday and see Jesus come.
Didn't you sense the presence of Jesus in that room?
Wait, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, he comes when I'm by myself, but it says where 2 or 3 are
so fun.
Gathered.
Yeah. But I love
He's in our
seeing
midst,
somebody like Tim and Kathy. I like seeing them like in my own room.
Nobody
I can
knows
worship,
Tim
but
and
I
Kathy.
can't. They're in our church.
I know. Well, people who don't know Tim and Kathy. So
Tim
they're
and Kathy. Their names are Tim and Kathy.
plays bass and Kathy is on the prayer ministry.
Yeah. And they're incredible humans. But like I got to see them singing and like I get to see somebody else singing, letting out their heart and vulnerability in the room together. In my own place, it's like, yeah, I can be in a moment with the Lord, but like together it's so rich. It's so beautiful to come together.
Yeah. And I kind of got off, but like I agree with that. There's things that happen in community
and healing
for that person. There's stuff that happens in church, community, corporately that doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah, and no one will know. And also, no one will know if you don't come together, like, and share. But I also want to say, like, there's something that you have, whoever is struggling with, like, being in the community, like, you have that no one else has, and we need it. And it can be inside a church building or outside, but we need you to come and be and bring it and, like, not hide.
And actually, Jesus said they'll know you by your love for one another. That's, like, internal. That's our love for believers. It says that they'll see your love and they'll be attracted to who God is based on how you love one another. And that happens in church community.
Figuring it out. Well, guys,
so good.
This is good. I feel like there's so much more. Every single topic we have, I feel like we could go like 3
There
more
is.
episodes.
And I realize, and to kind of wrap it up, and you guys could give your wrap up thoughts too, but like, it's not easy.
Right. Not at all.
It's not easy.
No formula.
Bad things happen. Disappointment comes. Sometimes you're in some situations that turn out the way you think they're going to turn out. Sometimes they don't. I would say the number one thing I would put out there, it's like, take your relationship with Jesus very seriously and work on your heart. Like, there's opportunities all week to work on your heart, and you say, ooh, I don't like what that did to my insecurity. I don't like how that provoked my anger. I don't like how that made me feel isolated. I don't like how that reminded me of this other situation or whatever. Like, there's times, there's opportunities for you all week long to go like, ooh, I don't like what that did to me.
Bring it to the Lord.
And you bring it to God. And then as you step through these situations, you'll find that you reframe these relationships when you forgive them and you repent. Like when you're like, God, I'm sorry. I allowed that person to have way too much power over me. I allowed that situation to own my mind for so many years. You know how long I've repented over stuff where I go, why did I fall victim to that for so many years? Why did I choose to live a weaker life by not simply being an owner of my decisions? Because it's not a weakness like in the sense of where we talk vulnerability. It's a weakness in the sense of like, you have a powerful choice as a human being to either A, endure a situation, B, confront a situation, C, choose something else, and then de-engage somewhere else. Right. You know, like you there's so many options for you. You're not powerless.
That's good. I would say check out first the Bible, but also check
out this book.
Check out this book.
But also 2 other books that really helped me in relationships, and especially now in the church here working here. But Brave Communication, a series, you can Google it, by Dan. Is it Dan Fairley? Dan Fairley, Brave Communication. So awesome. There's like a horse on the front cover. And Keep Your Love On, and creating boundaries and like pressing in with love. Those have really given me tools to like use my voice and confront and love people well.
Yeah. Just to wrap up my thoughts, I would just encourage somebody and say, your hurt is real. The emotions are valid. Experience it. Embrace it. Go to God with it before you make any type of decision that's going to alter the course of your life.
That's good.
Go get a word from God. Go sit in there with God. And yeah, of course, like go back, have the healthy communication with the people that you need to have communication with. But all in all, if you're watching this podcast and you see the title Church Shirt or whatever we decide to title it, you obviously know what life is like with Jesus. And you know life with Jesus is immensely better than anything else. And outside of the church, it's hard to have, if not impossible, to have a very full life with Jesus. And we just want you guys to encourage that true life with Jesus. Because there's nothing better. So
Amen.
Let's go.
Jesus, thank you for these people.
All right, and we're going to be back.
We'll be back January.
We're going to be back.
New year.
We'll do some new things.
Season 3.
Can't promise we're going to change the whole set, but we might. Who knows?
We might get crazy.
We might get into some new topics, might have some new guests. And so stay tuned. And we're going to be doing more things like this. And so we've got some ideas brewing.
Nice.
Thank you for tuning in. We love you guys. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Let's go.
Merry Christmas.